So then it is official. Gary O'Neill has become the new Wolverhampton Wanderers head coach. After a crazy few days at the club, Lopetegui's exit was confirmed late yesterday evening, and Gary O'Neill's appointment has been made official this afternoon at around 3 p.m. Guys, I'll let you know my thoughts. As always, do let me know what you're thinking in the comment section down below as well. It's been a crazy few days for us here on Talking Wolves. We did the podcast a couple of days ago when all the uncertainty started. Obviously, we did a video yesterday. Our phones have been non-stop with requests off the media to do radio or sort of TV appearances about the situation. But it's still crazy that to think that this club now, with 5 days before the start of the Premier League season for us, against Manchester United, there are not many easier fixtures than that. So it's not many harder fixtures, I should say, sorry. So it's a crazy situation to be in. But Gary O'Neill is here. He's a manager, 3-year contract for Gary O'Neill, the youngest manager to take charge at the club this millennium as well, and the first full-time British manager at the club since Paul Lambert in the Championship. So Gary O'Neill, of course, Bournemouth manager last season, took over after Scott Parker. Disastrous start for Scott Parker at Bournemouth. They'd lost out 9-0 to Liverpool. And the next game was, of course, against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolves fans rubbing their hands together, thinking, right, this should give us a good win. And Gary O'Neill took charge, really, strengthened Bournemouth defensively and made it. I think Wolves probably should have won that game, but that was one of the biggest disappointments of last season under Bruno Lage, that we didn't get 3 points from that match. But Bournemouth actually, we didn't beat them at all last season. They beat us at Molineux as well in the reverse fixture. Gary O'Neill actually beating Julian Lopetegui as well at Molineux. So it's a very interesting appointment from the club's point of view. Obviously, it's a young manager, exciting manager. From our point of view as fans, I think if you asked any Wolves fan if Lopetegui would be to go, who would you want to come in? I don't think Gary O'Neill would have been the name on anybody's lips. But all we can do now is obviously give him our full support. A few people obviously will be disappointed with what's going on at the club right now. But we've got to try and vent that frustration towards the board rather than the players and the manager, who, Wolves and the players, they had a really productive pre-season. I thought it was a solid pre-season, picked up some great results. Our result, obviously, last weekend against Stade de Rennes was fantastic, and some fantastic football in there. So, Gary O'Neill as a manager, playing sort of a 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1 type style at Bournemouth, very counter-attacking style. You would probably say on paper that Wolves had slightly, do have, as of last season, a stronger squad on paper than Bournemouth. So Gary O'Neill could certainly play in a slightly different way, but he's a counter-attacking style. He does like to, absorb the pressure and try and beat teams on the break, which we saw a lot under Nuno, and it worked quite well under Nuno as well. We saw him predominantly play with almost a second striker. It was predominantly sort of Dominic Solanke up front, and Philip Billing, really tall, well-built midfielder, really playing as a second striker or number 10. And it fits in quite well to how Lopetegui has actually set Wolves up, the players that we've got. Could he use Kalajdzic in a similar way that he's used Billing? I'm not sure. But obviously there's lots of videos, lots of content on O'Neill's style of play. And of course we'll see that for the first time on Monday at Old Trafford. We have got the thoughts of Bournemouth fan as well, just to give a little bit of insight. But Wolves obviously announcing O'Neill at 3 p.m. We had an article and thoughts of Matt Hobbs. We haven't seen an official interview from O'Neill as of yet, but I'm sure we will. O'Neill, Matt Hobbs, has given his thoughts on O'Neill as well, and said that it's an opportunity to do something different, a young up-and-coming British coach, and from the people we met, Gary was clearly the right person from very early on into his presentation. His attention to detail, thoroughness, and history of developing players impressed us. His work with both young and experienced players and understands the process. The detail he showed with his tactical work, including against us last year, gives you confidence about the work he and his staff put into every game. So this is obviously something very different. We've gone from Lopetegui, who's an experienced manager, a lot of experience at the top, to Gary O'Neill, who obviously only won not even a full season, nearly a full season, but not quite in management. He's been a coach, a very highly regarded coach previously as well. So it's something very different for Wolves. It's a little bit of a gamble, of course, but I suppose any appointment is a gamble. But for us as fans, we've just got to back him. So we've had a little bit of news in regards to a couple of the guys that he's going to be bringing in with him. Tim Jenkins, who was a former coach at Liverpool, and I believe a coach with O'Neill at Bournemouth as well, and West Ham coach Mark Robson. I think he's apparently the under-21s lead coach at West Ham. He's going to be part of the backroom staff as well. That's according to Football Insider. So we're going to be moving on now. We've got Craig from Bournemouth Fan Channel Up the Cherries in all departments to give his thoughts on Gary O'Neill's season, last campaign, what he's like as a person, what he's like as a coach, and what we can expect as Wolves fans.
Thank you for having me on again, Dave, and hello to everybody at Talking Wolves. It's Craig here from Up the Cherries in all departments. So it looks as if Wolves are going to be appointing our former manager, Gary O'Neill. And I wanted to come on and tell you a little bit more about Gary. Firstly, though, I will touch on Julian Lopetegui. I think Lopetegui did a very, very good job at Wolves last season, taking over from Bruno Lage. It looked as if it was going to be a work in progress. I had spoken on my channel to Michele Sarri, who is somebody who both coached and worked alongside Lopetegui, Arteta, Unai Emery, and of course our new manager Andoni Iraola. Now, Gary O'Neill comes with a lot of promise, but there is a couple of concerns that was within the Bournemouth faithful last season, and things that maybe Wolves fans should watch out for. So, I think Gary O'Neill did really, really well initially. So, of course, we was beaten 9-0 by Liverpool at the end of August, and then we had the game against Wolves, which was a 0-0 boring drab draw at Dean Court. I'm sure you can all remember it. Probably not, to be fair. It's not one really to remember. But it was the perfect result, not so much for Wolves, but for Bournemouth. A clean sheet after a 9-0 thrashing is something to build upon. And he did build upon that in the next game, which was against Nottingham Forest. We was 2-0 down. We come back from that scoreline to win 3-2. Between our game against Liverpool and the defeat against Southampton, we were the only team in the Premier League who didn't suffer a defeat within that time. And there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to Gary O'Neill for that. After that Southampton game, the wheels did fall off a little bit. We was beaten 2-0 by West Ham. We also had two results which, really we should have seen out. So it was 2-0 up against Tottenham Hotspur, which was a little bit of a surprise, got beat 3-2. You could say, okay, that's fair enough. It's Spurs. They were coming on us heavy after we scored that second goal, and therefore it was no big surprise. The one that did really concern me was the defeat against Leeds. We was 3-1 up with about 20 minutes remaining, and we conceded three to lose that game 4-3 at Elland Road. It wasn't good enough, and it shows the one failing of Gary O'Neill that I picked out in his time. I'm a big Gary O'Neill fan, I should say that, but one of my main concerns was that we went too defensive after getting, a couple of goals up. Like against Spurs, we went too defensive. We allowed Spurs to attack us, and therefore we fell apart at that. Likewise against Leeds, at 3-1 up, completely in control of the game. Leeds were nowhere to be found. Yes, if they got one back, I doubt they would have got three unless we did what we did, which was go too defensive. And this was something that irked a lot of fans because against Brighton as well, it was 0-0, a good result. We was, to be honest, we was more likely to win that game than Brighton were. And then all of a sudden, we thought, well, we'll take the point, went too defensive. It was only when Gary O'Neill started attacking games, and I know a lot of people put on a lot of credit on the players that Gary O'Neill did bring in to AFC Bournemouth in the January window. A lot of that was down to Richard Hughes and his good recruitment. So hopefully somebody at Wolves has got similar recruitment for the club and will provide Gary with the suitable number of players and the players that work to his style. But the problem was that we was going too defensive beforehand. we changed that. Gary O'Neill went a little bit more offensive. He had to. We were in deep in trouble. We was bottom of the league going into that Liverpool game. We won it 1-0. Considering, we had, about 5-6 months beforehand been beaten 9-0 by the same team. We carried on playing that way against Spurs. We was offensive. We attacked teams, and ended up winning 3-2. We was unlucky at the Emirates. Um, I think the 4-1 against Leeds. That was the game that really cemented our place in the Premier League. And Gary didn't revert back to that defensive type until the last 4 games of the season, which was disappointing, but the job was done. Everton had already been beaten by Manchester City, and the job was complete. Don't take anything away from Gary. Gary has done a fantastic job from a position which was really, really difficult. We were a new promoted team. We'd been beaten 9-0. The manager, Scott Parker, had slagged off the entire team beforehand. It was not good. It was not a good place to be. I understand from speaking to people within the club that flight home from Liverpool, you could hear a pin drop on it. And I think personally, you know, I think that Gary was excellent in the way he treated his players. I was lucky enough to actually meet Gary myself, in a day which was organised by Steve Fletcher himself, for one of our fans, which has sadly passed away, Al Guard. And during that day, Gary O'Neill come and sat down with me, and he was talking about his philosophies and the way he approaches games. He studies teams articulately. He will look into exactly what they're doing. If they do this, we do that. So that is the sort of person he is. He's very, very analytical, and I think he will be a success at Wolves. I think it's going to be difficult because considering, and it's not the players' fault, it's not the fans' fault. The fans deserve far better than what they're getting. The buck has to sit with the owners, and that's the reason why Lopetegui has left the club, is because the owners have let him down, and hopefully the owners won't let the club's fans down. Forget about Gary O'Neill. He's a manager. He's being paid by Wolves to do that job. And if he takes the job at Wolves, then, he has taken full responsibility for the results. But it's the fans that I feel sorry for, that, the fans deserve a lot better. But Gary will put up a fight. I think he will find the players to do the business, and I think he will keep you safe. I think he will keep you safe, hand on heart. I'm not just saying that because I'm on a Wolves channel here. I do think he will keep you safe, and I can see Sheffield United going down bottom, Everton second bottom, and Luton putting up a valiant fight, but going down. So I think you'll be okay. But hopefully, fingers crossed, Gary does a good job. We're right behind him. Well, I am personally, um, and I'm sure we'll be playing each other, not next season because we will be playing each other next season, but the season after that. But thank you, Dave, for welcoming me back on. And hopefully, like I say, Gary does a good job for the Wolves.
Big thanks once again to Craig. I'll make sure I leave a link to his YouTube channel in the comment section, in the description down below. Sorry, and the time of Gary O'Neill in charge of Wolverhampton Wanderers has begun. Hopefully, it's one of more highs than lows. Lots of wins. Hopefully, we see Wolves start scoring some goals again, and fingers crossed, it's going to be a fun time. And hopefully, we can steady this crazy ship that is Wolverhampton Wanderers. Guys, let's back the boss. And we wish Gary O'Neill all the best. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you all very, very soon.